When you go to patronize a prostitute, if the other party refuses to spread her legs, it is definitely not because you're not handsome enough or because her menstrual period is coming. The only possible reason is you didn't pay enough. Xiaolei's quotations. Then, Xiaolei somersaulted out and only got up after a long time. Tianjun already had a fierce expression on her face and shouted angrily, "What on earth is going on? It was still fine just now. Why are you spitting blood now?" Xiaolei thought to himself, but his face was solemn and he said solemnly, "Mr. Tian, I just was checking Miss Tian's illness. The poison gas in her body is too heavy. This matter is very strange. I'm afraid we still need to talk carefully." After speaking, he didn't pay attention to Tianjun anymore. He gently brushed his clothes and turned around to walk out of the room. Then Tianjun showed a bit of strange expression on his face. He just felt that this Xiaolei was indeed an extraordinary person. If it were those quacks outside, as soon as they saw his staring eyes, wouldn't they be scared out of their wits? But this kid was calm and composed. It seemed that he really had some skills. It couldn't be helped. I'm afraid his daughter's life really depended on him. The two returned to the living room outside. Xiaolei sat down, frowned, and said in a low voice, "Mr. Tian, how exactly did Miss Tian get injured? By whom? There must be some hidden secrets here, I'm afraid." After a pause, he ignored Tianjun's expression and slowly said, "I see that the wound on Miss Tian's hand is strange. I'm afraid she was scratched by a very evil and poisonous weapon. The weapon itself has some kind of evil tricks, and a very sinister force is devouring Miss Tian's vitality. I'm afraid if it goes on like this, in 2 or 3 days, her soul will be scattered." There was one more sentence in his heart that he didn't say. This little girl has no breath and her body is cold. She has already been dead for 7 or 8 points. If an ordinary person is in such a state, I'm afraid the little ghosts of black and white impermanence under King Yin Luo would have come to capture the soul long ago. It's only by relying on the 4-corner fire basin talismans and formations in that room, and the soul-calling mirror on her head that the dissipated soul is barely suppressed from leaking out. Only then has a trace of life been hung on. But seeing that Tianjun's face was not friendly, if he directly said that the little girl was actually already 7 or 8% dead, I'm afraid that if the other party gets angry, his own life will be in danger. So this word is absolutely not dared to be said. Tianjun, hearing his serious words, had a gloomy face and shouted, "Master Xiaolei, since you say so, then is there a way to save her or not?" Xiaolei, seeing the other party's excited mood, didn't dare to keep it a secret anymore and sighed. If I had come a few days earlier, maybe there would still be a way to save her. But today, alas, there's really a great difficulty. "Oh, how do you say?" Only then did Xiaolei really sigh and hesitated for a moment before saying, "Miss Tian is in such a state. 99% of her life force has been removed. She only relies on the magical artifacts in the room to keep her soul from dispersing. But after all, she can't escape the eyes of the gods and ghosts in the dark. I calculated the date, and I'm afraid that tonight the black and white impermanence ghosts in charge of the underworld will come to claim her soul. Life and death are determined by heaven, and we mortals can never stop it. Once Mrs. Soul is taken to the underworld, there will be no chance of survival." "Nonsense!" Tianjun's face turned red. He roared, and with a slap on the table, the redwood table was actually split by him. Xiaolei raised his eyebrows and smiled gently, saying, "Mr. Tian, your kung fu is really powerful. With such a powerful kung fu of yours, I'm afraid you practice a kind of extremely strong and yang kung fu. This kind of kung fu is exactly the bane of sinister and poisonous qi. If you had been willing to sacrifice your own cultivation to save her on the first day when a young lady was injured, using decades of your cultivation to save her, you would have already saved the young lady's life, and it wouldn't have come to this day." His tone was light, but his words were like a needle piercing into Tianjun's ears. His momentum immediately stagnated, and he sat down heavily. His face turned green and white. There was a mix of guilt and anger in his eyes, and for a moment, he seemed to be at a loss. After a long while, he just heaved a long sigh and Fanchang said, Mr. Xiaolei is indeed powerful. What you said is exactly the same as that great monk. That great monk also said that if I am willing to risk losing all the hard-earned cultivation power of my whole body for decades, I can also save my little daughter. But there was a look of grief in his eyes, and he said faintly, my great enemy will come to cause trouble for my Tian family soon. If my cultivation power is greatly damaged, there will be no one to resist him. At that time, if I am defeated, I am afraid that the family property of my Tian family for several generations will be ruined. How can I ruin the fate of my whole Tian family just for the life of my little daughter? Otherwise, for just a few decades of cultivation power, I, Mr. Tian, would not be so stingy. Xiaolei was secretly startled in his heart. He thought that this matter was rather complicated. Listening to Tian Jun's words, it seemed that the enemy who was looking for trouble with him was definitely not an ordinary person. Luring the attack on Miss Tian was probably to exhaust Tian Jun's strength. If he, without considering the seriousness, saved this girl, then the little beauty would naturally be alive. Then the enemy of the Tian family would probably bear a grudge against him. He was a penniless and powerless young man. Even a big gang boss like Tian Jun was so afraid of that person. If that person wanted to take revenge on him, a small Jianghu fortune teller. How smart is Tian Jun to have amassed such a large fortune by now? He is naturally an astute person. He observed the situation, saw that Xiaolei had an unusual expression, and immediately guessed about 7 or 8 points of the other party's thoughts. He drew out a check from under the table and said in a deep voice, Master Xiaolei, here is a blank check. You can fill in any amount within 10 million. Pausing for a moment, as if to strengthen Xiaolei's resolve, he added, if you can save my daughter, I will have another generous reward for you later. After speaking, he gently pushed the check forward. Suddenly, a light appeared in Xiaolei's eyes, and the smile on his face became 3 points softer. He thought to himself, oh no, a blank check with 10 million within it for me to fill in. That's a huge sum of wealth. Humph, I might not earn so much in my whole life of going to school and working. Even if I follow the old scoundrel to be a fortune teller, how many lives would I need to count, and how many feng shui views would I need to have to earn this 10 million property? If there is this huge sum of 10 million, then the situation will be different again. After saving this Miss Tian's family, I and the old fortune teller will leave here immediately. There are so many places in the world. Where can't we go? Just find a city to live in and be carefree for a lifetime. I'm afraid, even if the enemies of the Tian family want to take revenge on me, they may not be able to find me. Xiaolei smiled smugly, slowly stretching out one sleeve and gently sweeping it, and then rolled that check into the sleeve. Only then did he cough and said seriously, well, there's a way to solve this problem, but it will take some time. The immediate priority is to find a way to get through tonight's hell soul-harvesting ghosts. Fortunately, there are secret techniques in my sect, and this act of stealing the sky and changing the sun is not the first time. But there is one more thing. Then, a few meaningful expressions appeared on his face. Tian Jun smiled slightly and said, Master Xiao, rest assured, I will never reveal a single word about the help you have given me. Even for those people outside, I have a way to make them keep their mouths shut. After speaking, a trace of killing intent flashed in his eyes. Xiaolei's heart tightened. He could clearly feel that the trace of killing intent in the other party's eyes was genuine. Only those who had blood on their hands would have such an aura. The Tian family was indeed not a kind and gentle family. He quickly smiled and said, as a cultivator, how can I randomly have killing thoughts? That goes against the harmony of heaven. If I cause harm to others because of me, I'm afraid the heavens will count this act of losing virtue on me. In the future, I will probably be in great trouble. Mr. Tian, you must not act rashly. Well, but it's okay to make them keep their mouths shut. A month's time, after a month, it will be fine. Tian Jun laughed heartily and suddenly shouted loudly, a lie. As soon as he shouted, a person walked in from outside. It was the bald big man who had led the way in capturing Shaolei. He strode in, and the sharp and fierce light in his eyes was completely suppressed. He bowed and said, "Mr. Tian." Tian Jun waved his hand and said lightly, "Take the gentleman invited from outside to the guest building behind our mansion. You take people to personally guard them and make them stay here, eating and living well, and don't release them until a month is up. Do this carefully, you know." Alai had a serious expression and immediately nodded, saying, "Yes. Mr. Tian, rest assured, those invited gentlemen won't be able to go out even a single step from today on. I will definitely make them stay here as guests honestly for a month." Shaolei secretly stuck out his tongue and thought to himself, indeed, he is a gangster tycoon. With such a simple sentence, he can imprison those more than a dozen people for a month. However, with my one sentence, I also save their lives. However, those more than a dozen quacks outside don't know that I accidentally just walked through the gate of hell. Just as they were talking, there was a sudden commotion outside. Then a rough voice shouted, "What exactly is wrong with my sister Kerr? Get out of the way. I want to see Uncle Tian." Then there were two thumping sounds, which seemed to be the sound of fists and feet. Tian Jun had an unpleasant expression and said with a bitter smile, "I'm afraid it's the son of my old friend who has come. He is the fiancé of my little daughter. But my little daughter has some strange injuries and illnesses these days. It's not good to spread it, so I concealed the news. I didn't expect that he actually broke in by himself." Then there was a bang, and the door was kicked open by someone. A tall and mighty figure pushed aside two bodyguards who were trying to stop him and strode in. He was wearing an open-chested shirt over his bull-like body, revealing the two pieces of chest muscles full of black hair on his chest. His explosive muscles seemed to be about to burst the clothes. He strode in and at a glance saw Tian Jun and said in a deep voice, "Uncle Tian, what's wrong with my sister Kerr?" Shaolei had a strange look on his face, stared at the man who had broken in, but beads of cold sweat broke out on his forehead, and he blurted out a sentence. It's you muscle man big, uncle, eh? Fiancé. Ah." The man suddenly turned his head and saw Shaolei, and also cried out in surprise, "It's you, you hateful sissy."